Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today, listeners, I've got a lovely couple. They've been together 17 years and married for 14. They are KaToya and Damon Sumner. So welcome, KaToya and Damon.
Hey.
Hello there.
Thank you for having us on.
Unfortunately, I'm sorry we don't sound as pleasant as Lyn. We're just, regular Americans.
oh, bless you both. So, off air, we were talking about, all things to do with relationships and your areas of expertise, having been together, for as long as you have, and having to navigate your relationship to keep it fresh, to keep it healthy, and how communication plays a big part in that. So can you give the audience a bit of a background about yourselves and what's led you to be doing what you're doing?
Sure. We have been together for 17 years, married for 14. We met in high school, I text her senior year. We had one conversation freshman year. Lyn, stop me if I open up the nutshell too much, but I'm just giving the backstory here. We met freshman year. We did not talk at all the way to senior year, right?
Sure.
Did not talk at all. Two different types of people. And we got together on graduation. I guess you would call us college sweethearts. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Is that a thing? I don't know. Is that a thing?
I would say so, definitely.
Got married in college. Got married at 21 years old. And started our life together. What other important nuggets happened after that?
We've been married now for going on 14 years with 3 beautiful children.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say we're fighting the odds here, pretty much being from being such children to adults. Every now and then we sit back, take a look at each other. I really do this. And I'm like, I can't believe it's been all this time since we began. As far as who we are, that is our experience of life. We've lived our life, honestly and openly together and alongside others. So our experience comes from our life's experience, plus, what we've just had the honor of sharing in life with others about. And I love that about us, is that's just kind of, we're coming from our own experiences that we've experienced, and just love to share about that.
Okay, so what do you think has been the most challenging thing that you've had to navigate, throughout your relationship and you've managed to resolve?
Big question. I think one thing that we giggle about sometimes is the fact that marriage on paper really seems kind of crazy. Like two different peoples from two different worlds, two different backgrounds, and we're going to come together and be like, yeah, we'll figure this out. And there's this journey of learning and growing and living with a person and their habits and your routines and your systems and their preferences and all that together in a pot. You're like, yeah, I think we'll do this for 90 years. Sounds good. Let's try it. And so, there's this joyful uphill battle of figuring out and growing together, becoming one. And I think that's a challenge, not just for us, but for any couple who's desiring to have a healthy relationship, who's desiring to grow together over time. We've had so many highs and so many lows, and so many of our lows and spats and arguments, you look back, you're like, well, that was dumb. That was kind of silly, and sometimes it's about preferences. Sometimes it's about her doing things her way or me doing it my way. And so just continue to navigate that journey, growing together as a team, as a unit, I think is a joyful journey that had its fair share of challenges.
Yeah,
I love what you've just said there, and referring to it as a joyful journey. So that's really sweet, Damon. So KaToya, anything to add to what he's just said?
No, I mean, I really agree with that. I'm going back to reflection about it all, because I often need to reflect, to remember, and because you just live life every day and you kind of forget about the moments that you've had over time. And like recently we were just like, I was like, can you believe, like, wow, do you remember that happened to us? Like, and I think that's a testament that we've grown from each one. Like it just becomes a memory, those hard or difficult times where, we've had the largest argument or the biggest disagreement, or whoa, I think about like not being homeless, but we moved to Atlanta. We moved from Texas to Atlanta and didn't know what we were doing at all. I mean, we were a hot 21, 22 years old, but, just like crazy times of, going from space to space and being pregnant and not knowing what, like just so many decisions and things that we've made that looking back on it, it's not old news, but it is. And it's important to remember those moments, to realize that we've, overcome so much, and like, we can like reflect on it and then be joyful about it today,
Yeah, I love that. I love that you both referred to it as being a joyful thing. So I think, we can all have those perspectives, can't we? That we can choose to look at it as being a joyful experience, regardless of whether it's been the ups or the downs, or we can choose to look at it as being a negative emotion, whatever that might be, can't we?
Right.
And of course, now in the moment, Lyn, it's not always joyful and beautiful.
Not in the moment.
No, I get that.
But as I reflect on it, I'm like, wow, that was crazy. But, look at us now, generally that's the approach. And I think like, if we can continue on for the next couple of years saying, look at us now after we face those harder challenges that may come, because they're not over, then we'll be good for it. And that's more of what we want to share with others.
That's great. And so would you be prepared to share, how you've had your specific conflicts in your relationship and how you've managed to overcome that? And just, if you don't mind, be in a position to share an example for it, how you resolved it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Conflict is something that, we understand is an important part, not just of a relationship, but like of just life, like struggle, friction, tension. You're talking about in work, you're talking about, trying to grow in your career, your physical journeys, right? So there's an element of conflict that I don't think, we feel that we have to run from. And so in our marriage, if we come in level-headed and we both come in with the right mindset of wanting to say, okay, there is tension, right? We both come in with the mindset to reconcile. Now, sometimes, like KaToya just talked about, sometimes you'll come in with that humble mentality. Sometimes you're like, oh, we about to put your gloves on. We're going about. And so there's that reality. And I think there's comfort in knowing that KaToya and I, we both, more times than not, want to reconcile. We want the conflict to be gone. We want to get back. And KaToya has been better than me for 17 years of being quick to try to resolve the issue, right? Now, if you're looking for specifics, what's one of our last ones we talked about? You got something on your mind right there you got to say?
Well, I was going to say,
go ahead, get in there too.
I can also be quick to cause the conflict. Like I can present it very quickly, but I'm also quick to resolve it too. But I don't mind confrontation, because generally it's something that we need to resolve when there is a problem. And, an elephant in the room does no one any good, or sweeping anything under the rug does no one any good. And a lot of times we can allow things to build, hoping that it will transition or change on its own, but then you realize like this deserves to be discussed.
Right.
So I'm trying to think of an example that's like, I feel like when we come on podcasts, you want the juice.
Yeah. Well, I'll say that as we're thinking about juice, there's one other thing about conflict that has been kind of a foundational piece for us, and it's kind of this. What's another word besides philosophy? I don't know, but maybe we'll go with that. So one of our philosophies that we've kind of worked around is there's two essentially, right? There's this is a spectrum, right? That's a new word we've been using the last few years. But there's really two types of people in a relationship with conflict. There's the shaker, and then there's the dweller. And so KaToya is a shaker, and I'm a dweller. And so a dweller is someone when the conflict happens, you're trying to dwell on it. You're not trying to reconcile quickly. You're not going to turn around and quickly talk about it. You're going to go by yourself and fester. You're going to think back. Oh, I should have said this. You're going to be in the shower replaying the conversation in your head. You're not trying to move on swiftly. You're going to sit in it, right? That's me, right? KaToya is a shaker, where she's like, even if she might occasionally bring it up quickly, she's ready to shake it off. She's ready. She wants to have a good day. She wants to be around. She's ready to talk about it. Let's iron it out. Let's get back to giggling and cuddling and chilling, right? And if not, she'll shake it off individually, talk to her girlfriends, talk to her BFF, go play with the kids. Her day's gone. Meanwhile, I'm over here fuming, replaying the whole situation in 15 minutes, right? Now, of course, those are the extremes. Everybody kind of probably falls in that spectrum somewhere. Lyn, if I were going to ask you on the spot, which way would you lean more as a dweller or shaker?
Well, I would say that, my thing is explaining how masculine and feminine energy works. And I think generally speaking, women are the shakers, that want to shake it off, get on with, having a great day. And men are more likely to be the dwellers, the way you call it. But I refer to it, they need to go into their cave and process it all.
Okay. The cavers, the cavemen.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it is definitely, a masculine and feminine thing, it's just the traits of human nature. And generally speaking, the man in the relationship is more likely to be the masculine dominant energy, and the woman in the relationship is more likely to be the feminine energy in the relationship. And it's not always the case. But it's certainly in opposite sex relationships, that's mostly the case. And for me, that's been my observation over the decades that I've observed my own experiences, is that men need that extra time, I think, to just go and process, whereas women, because we're more emotional, and usually the way we heal is to talk about it, we're more likely to, get over it quickly, because we know if we can't talk about it with our man at the time, like you just said, Damon, she'll go to her girlfriends, and, that's usually what our girlfriends are for most of the time, is, getting it off our chest and being, that's what the feminine thing is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for us, once we kind of picked up on that, again, throwing everything in a bucket, but yeah, we'll figure this thing out. Coming from two different perspectives was challenging and hard. And I think over time, we really had to realize, one, respect and walk in understanding of our differences. Okay, she's trying to move towards reconciliation faster, right? She's realizing I need a little more time to process and dwell and sit on things right there. And so walking in that understanding definitely played a big part, right? Because at the beginning of our marriage, it was I was trying to dwell for a long time, and she was like, listen,
I know. I've been on the end of those men that have been dwelling in their own stuff, because they're all up in their heads. And as I say, men are more autonomous, and they like to figure it out and process it and analyze it and then analyze it again. Whereas women aren't like that, and we need to celebrate those differences and understand those differences. And this is what we don't get educated about, either from our parents or in school, do we?
Yeah. Very true. Very true. So, and that's a journey. And so I think for us, that journey has really been helpful to figure that out. And now we're much more understanding. And then that also getting into expectations. She has expectations now of how I handle conflict and vice versa. And so then it really kind of limits a lot of the conflict in general.
That's great. I love that. And I feel it's really helpful for women to understand that men do need that time out, and that they do need that space, because men aren't brought to share as women are, and they're not they don't necessarily heal in the same way around conflict. They do need to sort of have that time and space, go into the caves or whatever you like to call it, dwell, and then they're fine. after that, and it's understanding that it's not necessarily about trying to move on too quickly, because it's about understanding that that's what he needs to do in that moment in order to do what's right from his own masculine energy point of view. How have you found that, KaToya?
How do I find, like, kind of just giving him his space? And
yeah, I mean, have you learned that that's what's going on with, in those conflict situations?
Understood. Yeah, I mean, over time, definitely I've just understood who he is and the time that is needed. And I've learned to respect that. And I think we've learned to respect it for each other. So I don't move him to quickly resolve, like as quickly as me, but 24 to 48 hours, we need to get back on the same page. I think we've established a decent time frame, for us to resolve conflict. It's like, all right, how many days are we going to go? And so we literally more than 2 days is well overdue to me, because we're still existing, and like I said, we do have 3 beautiful children. We are working, there's so much life to be lived together. So to live that in opposition for too long is just unhealthy and unhelpful for us. So I think that we've come to terms to understand, like, all right, I'll give you some time, and I understand that, and I think I'll give him time to process and to, I've tried my best not to push him toward reconciliation, but really allow for him to do it. But often I will also test the waters, poke it a little bit, hey, we're good, just try to ease into the conversation to see if he's even willing to, meet me at the discussion. And over all these years, that generally is kind of how it happens. But when it does happen, it is received well. And I know that it's a time for us to move forward. But I also was thinking too about, for us, every baseline of conflict has a theme, essentially. And I think the themes are what we see most prevalent, instead of thinking about the situations themselves, because there's always an underlining baseline of a problem. And it just depends what the circumstance is that brings about that rooted issue that's still there, or that gets tested. So Damon is really good at giving examples, but I think in this broader sense of, oh yeah, that's when maybe that's the pride situation, or maybe this is where, testing motherhood or parental problems, things like that. So I feel like a lot of our issues are underlining or have rooted in bigger things than the situations themselves. I was just really trying to think about an example, but I went back to, that's a small situation, but it's always rooted in something bigger.
There's usually a bigger underlying cause, and what brings it to the surface is probably something very menial. In when you reflect back on it, you think, well, actually we argued about something that was really not worth arguing about, but like you say, there's usually a deeper rooted cause that's brought that to light, isn't there?
Absolutely.
It's like an iceberg, right?
Yeah, definitely. And so do you ever sort of, after he's had his couple of days in his cave, so to speak?
That's rare. Let me just stop right there. We're down to a couple of hours now.
We are. Yeah. It just depends on the severity of the situation, right? Like how deeply are we hurt, or how big of a situation, or the worst is it unresolved, right? Because the reality is we could bring it up, but we're not resolved yet. Because, I feel just here recently, we have a tween entering teenage life, and we both grew up very differently when it came into those teenage years. And so far in our parenting, we've been on the same page. It's been easy because we've been on the same page. And as we are approaching these teenage years and how we choose to want to handle that for our son, there has been tension and there has been disagreement and there has been unresolved decisions and discussions. And that part is probably the worst for me personally, because I can't shake something that's unresolved. I can, but I'm like, okay, like let's wrap this up, and we're not really able to see the same perspective, and we understand the perspective, but we're stuck moving forward in some areas. And I feel like that is really a new area for us because we've been on the same page so much.
That's very interesting, because I suppose, it depends on the sex of your children as well. So, you, Damon, might have obviously your own masculine way of what the way you feel what it means to navigate your son through his teenage years. And you as a woman, KaToya, might have the same views. I don't know if you've got a daughter that might be in conflict with Damon when she goes through her teenage years as well. So how are you managing to resolve those differences?
So right now our children's ages are, our oldest is our son, and he is 12. And our girls are younger, so they're easier right now. I know that the time's coming when they will not be easier. But right now we're going to enjoy it. The hard times to come. But it's interesting because our son is probably more emotional and more vocal. So he looks more like me in that sense. Would you agree or disagree?
On the emotional side?
Emotional and vocal. Like he has to express more. And Damon is not as emotional nor as vocal.
Sure.
So I feel like I connect with him in some ways in that regard a lot more. But I think the same as Damon compliments that side of me, I think is really helpful for Damon to be the male that he is to our son. So I think we both have very unique roles in our son's life. Mm-hmm. And I can't say that one leans in more than the other, but I think that might also be why we're in a weird space of moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is a exciting, joyful journey. We'll go back to that phrase as our son is, continue to move in the next phase of his life. And for us as a couple, it has created, important conflict for us to create new precedents, right? We've never had a quote unquote tween. So this is a new area for us as parents and as a couple. And so our communication, has to continue to be strengthened in our openness and our humility to come to things and really begin to, again, because I go back to the fact that we grew up differently, and the allowances that we had, the opportunities that we had or didn't have, our family styles and all those things play a part, but at the end of the day, I think what's most important is that KaToya and I have the same end goal, and that is to be and to have the best and healthiest family and marriage that we can have. And so long as that goal and that mindset stays the same, we'll figure it out. And so there's that relief and confidence we have in that faith, not just in ourselves, but our faith in general, that plays a part in our decision making. So it is exciting and intriguing to be in this phase, but we are together in it. So that's all good.
So do you ever get to a stage where you can actually say to each other, you know what, we're going to have to agree to disagree on this one?
Oh, yeah. I hate it. I do not like it. And it's probably a moment when I'm over talking, because then I'm frustrated, right? And I'm just like, wait. I hate to feel that we are just seeing the world differently at times. Like, for two people who've kind of been on the same wavelength, when we reach those moments where we can't quite get there, it's like I know that I'm gonna get a little exhausted, from the rounds of conversation that we're gonna have to work together to come to a decision, because it's really not something that we can just agree to disagree on when it's a bigger conflict, right? Like for right now, I'm keeping in line with our child. Like, he's waiting for answers for things. Time is moving forward. I mean, like I said, when I sit and reflect, I'm thinking, gosh, I have like 5 years with this kid before he's like 18 and that's scary to me. And I don't know, time just seems like it's moving away from you. So sometimes there's an urgency to want to not agree to disagree, but we definitely have to come to those, impasse moments where it's just like, all right, well, today's not the day that we're reaching this final conversation. So, and we just have to pause and we have to move forward. Fortunately, our lives are busy enough to be able to just, say, well, we'll pick this back up later. Like dinner has to be made right now, like you got to you can't sit with it, but you do know you have to come back to it eventually.
Definitely.
Yeah, and sometimes that can be an uncomfortable moments because that probably, that neither of you have changed your opinion, and you're probably still not going to be in a position where you can fully agree, but you can at least respect each other's opinion on it.
That's the main thing. Yeah, it's about like understanding. I don't agree with you, but I can understand where you're coming from. And I think as long as we can get there within a decent amount of time, then we can come back to knowing that we're not each other's enemies, that we're not out to get each other. And I know you were saying that, earlier, like we're on the same page, we're on the same team. And that helps put us in a better mindset than like, I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah, that compromise, that's just something that we feel every healthy relationship is gonna have is compromise. It's give and it's take. Like we just don't see how literally two different human beings with two different mindsets, two different, just perspectives are going to always agree. It could be as simple as what do you want for dinner? That could be, 30. Lynn.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I want Thai, you want barbecue, and then we're like, what in the world? So we're gonna have everything. And so just the level of compromise where we both feel heard and respected, and we both feel good about making a wise decision at the end of the day.
That's great. So any other final words around conflict resolution that you can leave our listeners with, Damon and KaToya, around, examples that you've experienced that you can pass on?
I think one, when you talk about conflict, a couple things come to mind. One is timing. If you're going to get into a conversation that you feel might be weighty, and it's like either this is a new conversation that might hit some, rough roads, or it's an ongoing conversation. Timing plays a part. It's important to, even we talk about, especially with careers of being effective communicators, it's important to be effective communicators in our, relationships as well. And if somebody's sleepy, or they just had a hard day, or they just came in from traffic, or whatever the case may be, that may not be the best time to bring up, a hard conversation, so kind of playing a part. Hey, maybe dinner's going, we're laughing a little bit, you kind of try to transition. So timing plays a part. And then also just like delivery, like kind of thinking about how you want to say things. Delivery plays a big part in many ways of how things are received, how things are perceived. And so those just two things that come to mind, for your listeners is when and the how. What about you? What do you think comes up when you think about conflict?
Those are really good.
Yeah.
I feel like I just be adding to it to it. I agree with those.
Yeah, I agree as well, because what I've found, as I say, around the topics of me talking about masculine and feminine energy, which everybody has, masculine and feminine energy. It's just that usually what one person has more dominant energy than the other, and and it's that polarization that creates the passion and the intimacy and attraction in a relationship. So what I've noticed particularly about men is that time and place is very important, because they're more less, or should I say not more, but less able usually to multitask. So that they usually need downtime after work, so they have to have about 30 minutes where they're just chilling, winding down. So like you said, Damon, not necessarily a good time, even though they're in a wind down period of time after they've just got back from work, to necessarily approach a difficult conversation, because they still need that time and space to actually do the unwinding. But from that point onwards is just saying to my partner, love, we need to talk about this, when would be a good time. And knowing that he's not that person that's going to be able to juggle multiple things at once, even if it's just in a space where he's winding down, so to speak.
Yeah, that timing plays a big part. I mean, we many times we will say, hey, we've got a few conversations we need to have, just to kind of like prep, just to kind of prime the day, the mindset. And then also, like, we're coming in, like, at least mentally ready to a degree. Like, it's one way, in my opinion, to kind of catch somebody off guard with a conversation, and they're like, whoa, where did this come from? Whereas it's like, all right, today after lunch, babe, let's talk about the budget, and
yes,
let's talk about, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, okay, we both can at least kind of be primed a little bit for that, so that can at least maybe ease some of the tension in general.
Yeah. And I think you also mentioned the how, and not to approach it in an aggressive tone of voice. I think tonality of voice can make a big difference. So just approaching that topic in a soft tone of voice can make a difference to how comfortable or uncomfortable your partner's going to feel able to speak about it later on.
Absolutely. I think even I think it's about knowing your partner. Like, I know coming in and joking a little bit is a little helpful, or, sometimes it's a preparation conversation, like, hey, we need to talk about this. Sometimes it's like, hey, yesterday, like, it's all about, I think there's a level to the conflict, right? And there's a level to how to resolve it, whether it's lighthearted, whether it's a sit down long conversation, whether it's even sitting with a counselor, discuss this in deeper with a third party, So I think it just depends on how long the conflict is going on, how heavy it weighs on one person's heart, or, so many different factors, but how you approach it, depending on you understanding and knowing the best way for your spouse to receive it, so that you all can work to a respectable, amicable, agreement, understanding is really key.
I absolutely 100% agree with that. One of the tips that I learned, and this was from John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, was, to say that something's not going to be a big deal, that you're going to be talking about. And, your man is probably going to think, I know it is a big deal, because, I was an hour late coming home, and, the meal got spoiled that she cooked for me, sort of type. It was the scenario he gave, and he knew that his wife had put a lot of time and effort into preparing this meal, and he was late home. He didn't let her know, and but he said that she said it's not a big deal, and that before she actually talked to him about it, and that immediately put him at ease and peace around having the conversation around it, even though he did know it was a big deal to her.
Mm-hmm.
Someone knew someone. They knew how to do exactly the way to try to ease in there.
Yeah,
that is very important.
For sure.
Okay, so for the benefit of our listeners, KaToya and Damon, what is your best contact information for anybody that would like to reach out?
Probably Instagram. We're on Instagram. You can find us there. It is Sum It Up Sumners. That's SUM Sum It Up Sumners. Sumners is SUMNERS. Sum It Up Sumners. And so that's our podcast to handle over there on Instagram. You can find us and have the conversation keep going.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Love it. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and being, so open to be sharing your own personal experiences on the podcast today.
We appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you all for listening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it just leaves me to say, listeners, true love starts with opening our hearts. And until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.